called methodology. Methodology is science of studying research. How scientifically we are able to contribute, scientifically we are able to approach a problem. So that is all about methodology. Fine. Of course, this research work will lead to new knowledge. New knowledge will be there, because at this stage you are not going to read some, of course, for the methodology program. For the coursework, you have some courses, you read something, you write an examination. But at the doctoral level, whatever work that we do will definitely end up in generating some new knowledge. And so that is very important, that we need to realize. And in a very simpler way, research scholars must also, learn to develop research questions. So that would help you to have a clear-cut mind, because research is ultimately, after all, it's all seeking answers for the research questions that we raise, isn't it? So research questions are important, because you look at the very word research, means search again and again and again and again. We should be going on, be asking questions. There's no end to it. Research is a continuum, because ultimately we are trying to find out ultimate truth. Nobody knows which is the ultimate truth. That is why, my dear friends, look at the word research. Searching again and again, meaning asking questions again and again. So when you do your work for 3 years or 4 years, within the given time, given resources, given understanding, you have raised some questions, you have collected some data, you have come out with some answers, and that is not the end to it. Somebody else would ask, some other question pertaining to this. So it is a continuum. It is a continuum that you need to realize. So raising questions is very important. Then one more thing is, of course, when you do your program as a doctoral program, Doctor of Philosophy, what does it? Of course, I am able to see my friend Dr. Bhupati. Of course, he has some. Good to see him. Good to see my own scholars. Supposing you go for in some interview committee, they would have done good research work, having good papers with doctorate degree and all that. Just to put them at ease, I used to ask the candidates, my dear friend, what do you mean by philosophy? You are holding a doctorate degree, Doctor of Philosophy. What does it mean? That candidate immediately gets disturbed, he or she gets disturbed. Philosophy is all about search for truth. Philosophy is nothing but search for truth. So when you are within the given time, you are able to do some search, and you have found out some truth. That is not ultimate. Within the given time, within the given understanding, given reading, given material, resources available, the techniques that you have put in, you have engaged, you have come out with some finding. That is the truth as far as your data, your information, your understanding is concerned. That is not ultimate. Somebody else would ask a question again. So it would continue. It would continue. So the point that I am really trying to say is, you must know that I'm not saying that you don't know the meaning of philosophy, but some of you might not be aware. They do hard work for 3 years, 4 years. They struggle. They burn the candle at both ends for 3 years, 4 years. They do a lot of work. But when the simple question is posed as to what exactly you mean by philosophy, some students struggle. That is the reason I'm saying philosophy is search for truth. Search for truth. Make a note. Okay. And even this quality research also, methodology has a different dimension. In the sense, there is no one fixed methodology that can be applied to all the research problems. No, absolutely not. In fact, when Rajkumar introduced me, I did my PhD from ISEC Bangalore, where one of the resource persons, one of the professors used to say, research cannot be taught. You used to be very bold enough to say research cannot be taught, methodology cannot be taught. Every individual has got a fine style of looking at nature, looking at reality. See, research is, after all, you look at reality, looking around in the backdrop of your own discipline, and you catch hold of a problem, set objectives, collect information, analyze, interpret the data. Okay. So there is no fixed methodology. Methodology has different dimensions. There is no fixed methodology. It goes on varying, And and there are criticisms that you need not get stuck with the existing methodology, models and all that. You can come out with your own model. You can come out with your own doing, your own method of conducting research. That would be appreciated better. But in the methodology part, am I audible? Am I visible?
Audible, sir.
Okay. There are some commonalities, although there is no fixed methodology, but there are some common indicators, common factors which all the research scholars must be familiar. I'm saying methodology is not fixed, there's no one size fits all, but at the same time, there are some common parameters which all the research scholars are expected to know. That is what I would like to discuss. It starts from the selection of a problem. I'm saying quality research starts from the selection of problem. And once if you are able to select a problem, if you are able to select an appropriate problem, 50% of the work is over. My dear friends, take it from me. If you are able to identify a problem, if you are able to select a problem systematically, scientifically, 50% of the work is over. I'm saying because many of the students, many of the scholars, they select a topic for 1 year, they select a topic, read something for 3 months, and then somebody else would suggest, my dear, if you choose a topic, you will get a job in World Bank, then they switch over to some other topic. After 1 year, they change again the topic. So that should not be the way. You spare some time, even it can take 3 months, 6 months, but once you select a topic, you stick to it. You see that the problem is viable, you have enough data, you have literature. Once you make yourself, you ascertain with that problem. So that's what I'm saying, it is a quality issue. I'm saying the quality point comes here. The problem should be selected by oneself. It is not some scholars I have seen, they come and say, sir, give me a topic, I will be able to do. He or she is unfit. You have to select a topic, because once you select a topic, your mind will automatically start working. If you choose a problem, conversely, if your supervisor selects a problem for you, then he has to think and he has to force certain things on you. So quality research starts from the very selection. You select a topic or a set of 2-3 topics and go to your supervisor and tell him or tell her, sir, I want to do in this way. Then that is the best way, rather than somebody else forcing some topic on you. So quality starts from selection. As I repeat, if you are able to select a problem which is appropriate, 50% of the 50% of the research work is over, because your mind will start working. Whether you sleep or whether you watch a movie, whether you take, even while taking bath also your mind will work, provided you choose a problem. So selection has to be done by oneself. So quality starts from the selection itself. Of course, review of literature. In fact, one of my colleagues yesterday, one of the resource persons spoke about it. But nevertheless, my dear friends, in this research methodology course, some of the topics would be overlapping. You can't help it, because we have set of parameters which everyone will repeat. But it's worth hearing twice, thrice. You will not be losing anything. I would say research review of literature is very, very important. I have the bad habit of saying very good for everything, but research review of literature is very, very important. In the sense, see, having chosen the problem, first step, you should review, you should exhaust all the available literature, be it an article or a manuscript or a book or a report or dissertation. Try to exhaust all the available literature. That should be the first duty of a research scholar. And some of the articles now, in those days when we did PhD some 30-40 years back, even for one article, we used to waste a lot of time. In the sense, we used to go to Delhi, Central University, Hyderabad, Mumbai, other places to look for one article. You people are very, very fortunate. Just type your topic. Hundreds and hundreds of papers are coming. Deluge of information is coming on the computer, in your Google engine or any Bing engine, whatever. So many papers are coming. So you must allot some time to exhaust all the literature. And the starting point there will be a seminal paper, meaning in your topic there will be a paper paper or book published in the previous years. It could be in 1960 or 70 or 80. If your seminal paper is published in 1980, you are supposed to cover from 80 to 2020. You must exhaust, my dear friends. This has to be done. There is no excuse. There is no excuse. As I said, some of the articles may not be accessible. It doesn't matter. Some they may say you have to pay something. You can ignore those things. But as much as possible, exhaust all the available literature. Please ensure, because once you start reading literature, you will know you will become very confident. You will really feel very, very confident with your own field. In the sense, you must know what are the issues involved, what are the controversies, what are the concepts involved, what are the methodologies used by others, what are the techniques used by others, how have they interpreted. You will gain lot of confidence, not overconfidence. You will gain enough confidence to proceed with your work. I'll tell you my own experience, which happened some 30, 40 years. When I started to work on industrial pollution, I went to a firm and asked for air pollution. Sir, what is air pollution in a company? They started to laugh at me. They said, you go and catch some air and then you test it. Because I never knew, unless you read the literature, air quality can be studied in terms of parameters. Air quality in terms of suspended particulate matters, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide. If you go and ask them what is the suspended particulate matter level, then they will know that this candidate has got some understanding. So you will know all that only when you read the literature. All the issues, all the variables, all the parameters, all the techniques which others have done. Fine. In any study, there may be some 50 variables. When you read the literature, you will note that this particular study has got 50 variables. You need not take all the 50 variables. You may pick up about 5 variables, 6 variables, but you should be aware that there are 50 variables pertaining to this problem. That you will come to know when you do your review of literature. You must narrate. These are the parameters pertaining to this particular problem. These are the variables which are there in this problem. And you justify that this study is interested in, he will be focusing on these 4 variables, 5 variables. There's no hard and fast. But you must know all the variables which are there pertaining to this. So you will come to know only when you do the review of literature. So there is no excuse. There is no excuse. As I said, get to know the concepts. You got to know the parameters, variables. You get to know the techniques used, how they have interpreted. You gain lot of confidence. You spare 3 months. Even if you spare 6 months, no harm about it. No harm. Because any problem has got different dimensions. And you just, through your review, you are able to look at all from different dimensions. And you are also looking at it from one particular dimension. Fine. So that will be possible when you do your review of literature. There is no excuse. And I always used to insist, when you do your chapter on review of literature, they say X has done this, Y has done this, somebody made a study in USA or in Uyaganta Thirumalai. You write all that. But my only request is you spare 1 page, my dear friend. You spare 1 page in your review of literature to show that what exactly is the gap. So much of work has been done in the last 30, 40 years, 50 years. We don't know for several years. But some aspect has not been dealt with so far. That you will identify only when you do your review. Fine. When you read the literature, you will get to know that this particular aspect has not been studied by others. So you try to highlight that by saying that this has not been studied. So the purpose of the study is to fill this gap. So research gap, in your review of literature, spare at least 1 or at least 1 paragraph saying that this is the gap. So that shows your efficiency. That shows your competence, that you are able to read the literature, you are able to master the other existing studies which have been carried out all along, and you are able to identify some gap, and this study is to fill the gap. So that will be the logical sequence. This is what I'm saying, quality research. Because I'm not trying to undermine. I'm not trying to say that others have not given it. I'm only saying for the first time. No, my dear friends. No. But by and large, I've seen, because we do evaluation of thesis, you find 30, 40, 50 pages for review of literature. Nothing of that sort. They don't allot any space for research gap. Research gap is a must. Research gap is a must. Please remember, And that is why I'm saying research scholars must spend at least 15 minutes, 3 months or 6 months do the review. And your supervisor should be scared of you after 6 months. When the supervisor looks at your face, supervisor should be scared. So you must have that much of reading. You must go and tell him, sir, I've read these many numbers. It could be 30, 40, 100. Don't worry. Even if it is 10, the number of studies that you've done, review is 10. Don't worry. It should not be 500, 600, nothing of that sort. Even if it is 10, 20, but read them pakka. Make yourself thorough with that. Go to the supervisor. Sir, I have spent 3 months. I have read the literature, sir. I have read this article. I have understood these concepts. I have identified these are the variables. These are the limitations. These are the constraints. These are limitations. Then you are ready. Once you complete your review, after identifying the gap, please make a note, my dear young friends. You must identify a gap, and you make it explicit in your thesis. Spare 1 page or at least half a page, and if possible, spare 1 more page by saying that having read the literature, I have understood these issues, these controversies, these policies, these models. Nothing wrong. Otherwise, sparing some 40, 50 pages for X saying, Y saying this, Z saying this, wonderful. But what is your contribution? Having read the literature, having spared 6 months for it, what is that you are contributing? What is that you are reflecting in your thesis? You spare 1 page. You say that you have understood this concept well. You have understood these issues well. Understood these models well. Please, my dear friends, do this. Okay, and right from kindergarten to your post-graduation, we have the habit of referring only to the textbooks. What some syllabus is given, textbook is given. We get stuck with only reading textbooks. But at the research level, I'm not trying to underestimate textbooks. Textbooks are required, is essential. But the point is, journals, not magazines, journals, research scholars should learn to lay their hands on journals. What is the difference between textbook and journal? Textbook would have been published in 1990 or 2000, 2010. But journals, some journals might come once in 6 months. You ask Naveen, he might know, because he's publishing good number of articles. Some journals might come once in 3 months, 6 months, once in a year. So periodically you get to know, because information is updated. Journals are the material where information is updated. That is not the case with textbook. If it is published in 2018, information gets stuck with only up to 2018 in textbooks. But journals carry you latest information. So learn to refer to journals. I must repeat, I am not saying that research scholars are not referring to journals. No. I am a very humble man. You please check with Rajkumar and Dr. Bhupati and Dr. Naveen. I am only trying to remind that you must develop the habit of reading the journals. And in those days, we have to buy a hard copy. Now it is online. It is available. Just type it, it comes. So develop that is also part of quality research. That is also very much part of quality research. Okay. And in research, having read the literature, having chosen the problem, identify the problem, and then read the literature. Now you fix up your area of study, period of study, data source, sampling, collection of data, analysis of data, interpretation. All these you see when you choose an area of study. Again, when you choose an area, don't say that my native is Tanjavur or Perambalur, I'm coming from Perambalur, I've chosen this. No. You say that this particular problem is very serious in this area, or this particular problem has not been dealt with. That should be the reason. I cannot say that I'm choosing a problem in Trichy because I'm working in Bharadas University, I'm living in this place. No, absolutely not. Sometimes it may be it's a coincidence that your problem may be pertaining to Trichy, but when you say your area of study is Bangalore or Karaikudi or whatever, again you spare one paragraph by saying that why this particular area. Justify. That is where I'm saying quality research. You justify this area of, you have chosen this because of this reason. See, it is expected even at the MPhil level, but at the doctor level, it is expected. I'm not saying that you write 10 pages, just one paragraph. Why this particular area you have chosen? Justify it, rationalize it. That is essential. Then again, period of study also you have to justify. For secondary data, of course, you choose some 1980, 90, depending upon the availability of data. For primary data, you have to be very categorical. Categorical. When you do a survey, you state explicitly that the period of study is from January 2019 to December 2000, whatever, 6 months or 1 year. Primary survey, your period of study should be categorical. In some of the thesis, some of the documents, you find nowhere it is found. But the candidate has conducted a survey. We have to, examiner will have to do research to find out that. But don't trouble the examiner. You may, it requires just 2 lines. Your period of study from this 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, whatever, and again you justify. Again you justify. You have to justify that period of study. Of course, data sources and sampling, Dr. Bhupati would have explained all that. Collection of data, analysis of data and all that. Okay, fine. And the type of data that you collect, I'm not going into data analysis because afternoon another madam is going to talk about big data analysis. See, I'm only keen on the type of information that we get. My dear friends, see that the data that you collect is authentic. It is reliable, dependable. If the data is not dependable, if the data is not reliable, that the work that you do will be dangerous for the society. Please ascertain, confirm, do double checking that the information that you collect is authentic. I would define research in one sentence by saying that it is an intellectual work or academic work on authentic information, on reliable information, on dependable information. This is extremely important. The data that you collect, imagine, my dear friends, if the information is not dependable, the type of conclusion, the type of inference that you make will be dangerous for the society. It is not going to be of any use to anybody. And in fact, it is going to be of some way, it is going to disturb others. Fine. So, see that again, I must apologize. I'm not saying that you are not collecting dependable information. You are not no. I'm only trying to reiterate, because in research, some of the things will have to be repeated. And for want of time, some people, they depend on some unreliable data. That is absolutely unfair. If the data is not available, you say that it is not available. Don't cook. Don't manipulate the data. This is where the question of quality research comes in. For want of time, sir, my fellowship gets over. I have to complete my work. I have to get a job, get married. So I'm cooking the data. Don't do that. Don't do that. If the data is not available, you stay categorical within the given data. With whatever little data that is available, you work on it. But the data that is available to you must be authentic, must be reliable, must be dependable. I repeat, dependable authenticity of the data is exceedingly important. Fine. Okay, primary data, and some students have that disease. They do, if they have some 300 samples, sample size is 300, 350. They do for 50 samples and then they sit at home in a AC room and then they manipulate it. No. That's not fair, and I'm sure we don't do it. I'm only trying to caution the students. And if you do that, at the most, it will get you a PhD degree. Beyond which, you will not be able to do work in future. You will not be able to conduct research, and you will not be able to do something for the well-being of the people. After all, why do we do research? We try to understand what is happening around, take up a problem, collect data, work upon it, and infer something, and that inference will be of some way useful to society. It will be good for the well-being of the people. Your work, you may not know. You may only think that you are doing research to get your PhD. My dear friends, the work that you are doing is extremely precious. The information, the results the outcome will be of immense use to the policymakers. They make use of your information to do something to improve the well-being of the people, improve the welfare of the people, happiness of the people, to improve the living standard of people. You don't know. Imagine if the work is really quality work, it'll end up in improving the well-being. It will end up in improving the welfare of the people. All of us. It will improve the welfare, the happiness of human beings, livelihood of people. On the other hand, if the data is not dependable, if the work is not quality work, I don't have to say. Of course, you will produce a document in the name of thesis that will fetch you a wonderful doctorate degree. But this beyond that, imagine it is not going to be of any use to anybody. And regarding data, we normally in social science will be happy to have secondary quantitative data. Good. So that you do some analysis, whether you know the technique or not, we do that analysis. But remember, along with quantitative data, qualitative data is also very important. We sometimes neglect quality information, so not qualitative data. We get stuck with quantitative data. Quantitative data is important. The same amount of importance has to be given to qualitative data also, which will be very descriptive. But in your own questionnaire, in your own interview schedule, just make a note. Don't say that these are all very simple, trivial issues. No. Those qualitative information would help you when you interpret the data. Quantitative data are just numbers. Qualitative information will make you speak, will make the quantitative data to speak. So do not ignore the qualitative information. That is also important. And on a customary basis, I always say that there is difference between questionnaire and interview schedule. Very, very preliminary. Questionnaire is something which you prepare and send it to the respondents. Respondents will fill up and send it to you back. That is called questionnaire. The other thing is interview schedule. You prepare the schedule, you take it to the respondents to pose the questions. They will give some answers, and then you note it down. It is interview schedule. I'm saying this because many of the foreign examiners, they used to point out these scholars in India are unaware of this distinction between questionnaire, and we are far better than many of the foreign researchers. But these are very trivial. But we must get to know. There is no excuse. I don't know the difference between questionnaire. Very simple, very trivial, but get to know the distinction between these two. And don't commit that mistake in your thesis. If you have done questionnaire method, meaning prepared questionnaire, send it to the respondents, they will prepare it. They will fill it up from somewhere and send it to you back. It is questionnaire. On the other hand, interview schedule is the one which you prepare, carry it to the field with the respondents. You note down. That is interview schedule. Okay. Then comes the question of analysis of data. Of course, I'm not going into what is correlation, regression, ANOVA, chi-square. There are a number of techniques. There are a number of tools. You ask Dr. Bhupati, he will give you SPSS. I'm only saying, my contention is, having involved in research for the 30 years, my strong conviction is, if what you can use any type of analysis. It could be regression or multiple regression, or now I can't even pronounce. Good sophisticated techniques are there. But my only submission is, you make yourself pakka. You make yourself thorough. What are all the variables which are involved? Which one is dependent? Which one is independent? You must see. Suppose you take chi-square. In Tamil Nadu, there is one syndrome. You take any thesis, you find chi-square analysis. And you go to the YOOC just to make the candidate, to feel comfortable. I used to ask, what is chi-square? Candidate sures. I'm not, again, please, I'm not saying that candidates are, I'm not undermining. But you spare some time. If you want to use regression, you read it for 1 week. You take 1 month to read it. What is dependent? What is independent variable? What is the steps involved? Will it take 1 week? It will not take 1 week. You have already studied at the UG level and PG level. Spare 1 week to read, make yourself thorough, and then you apply the technique. Don't blindly do it. That is what I'm saying. Analysis of data, அதுல வந்து to what extent you can proceed. If you are not capable of using multivariate technique, don't use it. Now I'm seeing you people using structural equations. Very good, very good. But you ask them what is structural equation, they don't know. They don't know, but they spare 10 pages in their thesis. Structural equations are very, very tough. But I'm not saying you are not capable. You are capable, but you spare 1 month to study or to learn from experts about the stages involved in structural equation, and then you do it. Why do you do it on a ritual basis? Without knowing that, don't do it. My only submissions, I'm raising my voice because these are the mistakes which candidates are committing. If you are capable of doing simple percent, you do only simple percentages. No examiner will ask you why you have not done structural equation, why you have not done analysis. No, nobody will ask. But if you are able to do it, well and good. You may publish your paper in some good journals. But my contention is, without knowing what is analysis of variance, if you do it, if they ask you in your interview, not in the YOOC, in your own selection committee interview for assistant professorship or associate, if you are not able to answer, they'll send you out. For that sake, I am only making a plea that spare 1 week or 1 month to make yourself thorough with the technique. It is not something new. You have read it at the UG level, statistics, PG statistics, MPhil statistics. You have studied. But why don't you spare some extra time and see that how you translate that to your problem? So Appavandi, you have to be all the more careful. Read it once, twice, read 10 times, read 20 times until you understand. That is what I'm saying. But I have my own reservations. I'm very sorry to say some of the scholars, they do it without, simply they give it to some experts, they do it, you get the results. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay. Anybody can collect data, but analysis will have to be done only by the researcher. Researcher has to analyze the data, because only when you analyze, you learn, you learn to get hold of to gain mastery over some technique. Because at this stage, whether it is MPhil or PhD, you are only learning to walk. You are only learning to do research. It's only a beginning. I would say that PhD ends where research begins. When you complete your PhD, you are ready to do research. So which means at that stage, you must learn. Of course, you can take the help of people like Bhupati and other experts, but you do it. Some clarification is required. Somewhere you get stuck, your beard is going, you become so sorrow. Then you go and approach, you get your doubts clarified, and then you proceed. But don't depend entirely on them. You don't depend entirely on them. You do it. So only then, you become competent, and you are ready to get a job, to do your research once you attain a position. Conversely, at that stage of in your PhD level, if you don't learn to do even a simple technique, then you will not be able to do anything in future. So that is the reason I don't know, I'm raising my voice. I don't know whether I'm shouting. Naveen, am I so harsh with the participants? Huh? Rajkumar, am I so harsh?
No, sir.
No, sir.
We are very old. I'm a retired person. I'm getting angry because I want you people to do some good, because everyone has got wonderful potential. You have to be. We are only trying to direct you. Don't think that from my voice I'm trying to be very harsh. No. Okay. And analysis, I will spare some 2-3 minutes. It's only linking data. Once you collect data, you prepare master table, and you look at the data like a insane, like a mad person. Even if somebody ridicules you, don't worry. Your parents, your friends may laugh at you. Look at the data. Stare at the data for 1 week, 10 days, even 1 month. Look at the data. Just stare it like an insane person, like a mad person. Stare at the data. stare at the raw data that you have put it in master table. Then you will know, because see, research is for 3 years, 4 years. You will have enough time to stare at the data, and the data morachu parunga. 1 month morachu parunga. Pathina, so of course, Dr. Rajkumar participants are from other states. When you see VA teachers in Tamil Nadu, we used to be bilingual. We speak for some 15-20 minutes in Tamil, then we switch over to English. We used to be bilingual. Yeah. So I'm saying you stare at the data, then you will know after 1 week, 10 days, you will know that you are able to get only 50% response or 60%. If you are lucky, you may get about 70%. Nobody will be able to get 100% data. Even Amartya Sen would not have got it. Don't worry, it's only 50-60%, no harm. If it is provided you have done it genuinely, provided you have done all justice, with all integrity, you have collected the data, it is only 40-50%, 60% is okay. Even 50% is wonderful. Then you will know which are the data that we expected and which are the one that we are able to get it. So you will know which one that we have really obtained. Then you start your analysis. Otherwise, once you prepare the master table, very next day you go to analyze, feed the data. No. You spare 1 week. This is what I'm saying, quality research. You spare, it is your own child. You look at your own child. You look at it, and you will because once you look at it, you will know what are the hardships, that how much of labor that have gone into this, how much of time, energy which have really gone into this, how much you expected. And some people are very lucky, they get 70-80% response, but it doesn't matter. 80% kadichalu ondada, 50% kadichalu ondada, don't worry about it. But you must ascertain how much of data that you are able to obtain it. 50-60%, that must be done. Okay. And as I said, it's only linking information. You just throw it, it will not speak louder. Supposing in your own college, information, there are 1,000 students, 10 faculty members, 100 classrooms. These are just information. You relate one with another, number of students with number of teachers. Then you will know for one teacher you have how many students are there. For one student, how many classrooms are there. Do you understand? As I said, bar diagram, pie diagram, and then if you are able to identify dependent, independent, then you go for a correlation, regression, all that. So do it slowly, because you can spare about 3 to 6 months for analysis of data. Okay, and don't try to just complete it in 1 week, 10 days. You take 3 months. You do it yourself, and you take, of course, whenever you get stuck with some analysis, you take the help of experts. No harm about it, but you do it. Okay, that is the way. Okay. And again, why do we analyze the data? Because we have a set of objectives. Research is all about realizing the set objectives, isn't it? You take the first objective, and then you see what data we have. It may be qualitative or quantitative. You do the analysis and say that relating to first objective, you have done the analysis. Go to the second one, third one, fourth one. You see that whether it is primary data or secondary data commensurate to it. You see that when you are able to analyze, commensurate your objective, you feel that your work is over. Because I have seen some of the scholars, they don't know whether they have completed their work. It happens in some of the big universities like Delhi School or JNU, and some of the big universities, where they go on be doing it for 6 years, 10 years, like that, without knowing that they have completed the work. So the simple recipe is, analysis is nothing but do the work commensurate to your objective. If you are able to realize the objectives within the given time, given data, your work is over. please, that is where you need to, pull your socks and realize, yes, first objective. Supposing when you do some data is missing for the first objective, then you compensate it. You collect some more and you fill it up. Similarly for the second, third, fourth, like that. So analysis should be commensurate to the objectives. Once you feel that you are able to realize all the objectives, you are sure that your work is over. Okay. So it is all realizing. Again, statistical analysis, I already told you, make yourself thorough, make yourself pakka, and it will not take much time. It will take hardly, Rajkumar, please remind me when I complete 45 minutes. Because we are basically teachers and we tend to speak more. How many more minutes I have? Rajkumar? How many more minutes I can speak?
10:30 to 12 o'clock, sir.
10:30, 12 o'clock. It is 11:20. I can go up to 11:45.
Sir, excuse me, sir. Sir, Rajkumar, sir.
Rajkumar.
Sir, correct as 12 o'clock number complete.
In the presentation, I can go up to 11:45.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. I'll proceed up to 11:45. Fine. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
So there also, even in analysis of data also, whatever technique that you use, you rationalize it. You say that this particular tool is appropriate. Don't blindly use it and don't do it on a ritual basis. What is required, you do it. You do it and you become 100% confident, because when we go for member in selection committee, we used to see scholars using all tools, starting from correlation, regression, ANOVA, chi-square, up to structural equation. And when we ask some questions, they get stuck. But my only request is, even if you use just 2 models or 2 techniques, you make yourself 100% pakka, so that you will be able to answer, you will be able to defend. You will be able to defend that technique. So make yourself, whichever, up to which point you can defend. Don't blindly use all the tools which are available in SPSS or in R statistics. Okay, they are there available. What is appropriate to your work, to your problem, please do apply it, so that you will be confident enough to defend it, whether it is in your PhD viva or in your when you apply for a job. Okay. Next comes the question of your hypothesis. Of course, my friend Dr. Bhupati would have spoken. I am only raising a question whether hypothesis is mandatory. Hypothesis is all about a tentative proposition, theoretical proposition, subject to empirical verification. That is hypothesis. It may, today is 11th June 2020. It may rain today. It's an hypothesis. It may not rain today. It's an hypothesis. But we are supposed to generate hypotheses within our subject, in the backdrop of our own discipline. Fine. It is good. Generating hypothesis is an excellent exercise in research. But my question is it mandatory? Is it compulsory? To my knowledge, it is not compulsory. It is not mandatory. If it is warranted, if it is necessary, because don't do anything on a ritual basis in research. You use your own style. If it is warranted, if it is necessary, you use it. But once you select an hypothesis, you must know hypothesis is a tentative theoretical proposition subject to empirical verification. Is an hypothesis. What is null hypothesis? What is alternative hypothesis? What is a type 1 error, type 2 error? What are the ways of testing that hypothesis? How do you interpret the hypothesis? All these are necessary. But basically, I am asking, don't make it compulsory. If it is warranted, you set an hypothesis. If it is really required, you use it. But once you set it, please be sure. Because another problem is, I am making this point because some of these scholars in their own thesis work, they have number of hypotheses, and when they interpret, they say the hypothesis is rejected. Hypothesis testing is a statistical tool. It's a tool that you have used it. If you are saying it is rejected, there is no evidence to reject it, that is not the end of it. When you reject, what is the inference? See, hypothesis testing is a statistical tool. In your thesis, you say that you have used this tool and you're saying that the hypothesis is rejected. They stop it. But when you reject, what do you infer? That is what is expected of a research scholar. Hypothesis testing is a tool that we have borrowed. We have hijacked from statistics, discipline of statistics. But our duty is to use it. Of course, you can use it. But what is expected of a research scholar is when you reject, what does it imply? What do you infer? And how do you relate that with your problem? How do you relate that with your objective? That is very important. Ada students. Huh? Hypothesis is rejected. Full stop. Next, go to the next page, they discuss something else. Then they say hypothesis rejected. What is rejected? When you say it is rejected, what does it mean? What do you infer? What do you imply? So that is important, my dear friends. Please make a note. I am only making 2 points as far as hypothesis is concerned. Hypothesis is necessary if it is warranted. If the problem warrants hypothesis setting, you do it. Don't make it compulsory. Don't make it compulsory. Don't force the hypothesis in your thesis. Don't do it on a ritual basis. Okay. Sampradaya padi sayya venda. Okay. Next one, once you formulate, you do it pakka. What is your hypothesis? What is your null, alternate? What tool that you have used? And once it is rejected, I am saying, what does it imply? What is the implication? How do you relate that with your problem? That is very, very important. I am saying all this because I see, I'm so sad to see in some of the theses that, they simply stop with rejecting it. And you go for the YOOC and you ask the candidate, the supervisor gets angry with me. They want me to say it is a good work, the candidate has done a good, excellent work. You give me data, TADA, you give me some good meal, good food. That is not the purpose. That is not the purpose. So make sure, some of these I'm saying because we have good experience for more than 3 decades. So whatever I'm saying today is not the one which I've learned last night. These are the things which I've been learning in the last 30 years, 3 decades. So please make note of all this. Next question is theoretical background. Idu kuda the resource person would have spoken. This is, I'm saying, this is a must. This is compulsory. Theoretical background, theoretical discussion is mandatory, particularly in social science. Particularly, it is important in all the sciences, more so in social sciences. Because, you have a problem in hand that has been discussed in the last 200 to 300 years. Many people have looked at it. Many people have formulated, many people have come out with some theoretical explanation. Why do you put all of them under carpet? So when you have a problem, see that how, for example, in economics, what are the contributions relating to your problem? What is the contribution made by classical economists? How did classical economists look at this problem? How did neoclassical economists look at this problem? Modern economists, Keynesians, institutional economists, environmental economists. Like that, you should be clear about the theoretical background. I'm not saying you should write 100 pages. You write some 15, 20, 25 pages because that adds value to your work. Meaning that will also show that the work is being done by a person who is in this discipline. Because otherwise you have a problem, that can be done by a statistician alone. That can be done by a person with physics background. A person in chemistry can do it, but where do you show that this work is being done by a student in economics or in environmental science, whatever? So theoretical background will show that your background is this. You have read this in your undergraduate level for 3 years and in your PG for 2 years. Why do you put all of them under the carpet? You don't try to forget about all those theories. Adhikaga, you cannot bring all the theories in your thesis. What is relevant, what is related to your work, you show it in your thesis, that and that theoretical background adds immense value to your research work. Because in Dr. Rajkumar, as he said, in Institute for Social and Economics, it's a holiday institute where they insist they give about 3 months to do this work. If you don't allot one chapter for theoretical background, they will not accept the thesis at all. You will have to find, you can take the help of a supervisor. You have to spend time to find out which theory is relevant. You trace it and then you relate, because that will help you to solve many of your own problems. Theory is, after all, nothing but verified hypothesis is theory. In simpler form, theory is nothing but verified hypothesis. Another form is you fix up a proposition and then you give some assumptions, you give some, you put it in a tabular form, in a diagrammatic form, equation. All these to substantiate that point. Then you have criticism. So it takes a form of a theory. These people have been doing it for last 300, 400 years. You cannot try to one fine morning, you don't try to throw away all the existing theories and taking up a problem. That is totally unfair. That is totally unfair. For quality research, theoretical background is a must. MUST. Please make a note. Theoretical background is a must. See, adukkaga don't go and disturb your supervisor. Sir, sonare, what is the theory? You spare some time to find out, think about it, whether classical economists have done it, neoclassical, modern economists, Keynesians, institutional economists. You spare some time and then you go to the supervisor and then discuss. So that is why research work is spread across 3 to 4 years to do this work. Fine. So theoretical background is a must. I am ready to contest in any forum, without which the work will not be quality work. Okay. Then another important point.
Hello. Hello. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure. Thank you.
After going, okay, sir. After going through reviewing literature, we often get confused whether to choose, whether to go with the null hypothesis or to go with the alternate hypothesis, as this is the work which a scholar is supposed to do himself or herself. So what is the best way, as I am myself a research scholar, I am working on my reviewing literature, but most of the time while reviewing literature I get confused result. So on that very basis I am facing a difficulty whether to go with
confused with what? Confused
with whether I should go with null hypothesis or I should opt for alternate hypothesis, as I have got 4 variables in my research and I have only one they less use it or no use it variable. Otherwise other 3 variables which I have got had already been researched. In other case, I would say my research is more an enhancement study. So
okay,
yes,
I
sir.
got your point. See,
Okay,
it's
sir.
not the question. I'm happy that you have posed a question, and that means you are following. I'm able to reach many people. That's a good news. See,
Yes,
the point is, it is not whether you have to choose null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis. Both are required. See, point is, once you decide to formulate hypothesis, both null hypothesis and alternative, both are required. Both are required in your work. The point, see, when you see null hypothesis is something which understanding the reality of a society as a whole. Fine. You are interested in understanding the parameters, characteristics of the entire district, maybe Coimbatore. Okay. And you are collecting some information from Coimbatore, and the information that you collected, fine. You are saying there is no difference between your sample characteristics and the characteristics of the population. You are saying no means you want to generalize it for the entire population. That is why you are saying the difference is nothing. There is no difference. You have a sample of 100 where the population is 1 lakh. you are saying null means there is no difference between the sample that I have and with the 1 lakh population. That is called null, nothing. There is no difference you are claiming. So depending upon your result, you are able to reject the hypothesis, or you have no evidence to reject the hypothesis. That is where the question of rejecting the hypothesis comes in. So the point that you need to understand is null hypothesis means the hypothesis which is under test is called null hypothesis. So in your case, you need both null and alternative. Once you take null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis automatically comes in. So it is not the question of choosing null or alternative. You have to set both null and alternative hypothesis in your thesis. And the hypothesis that you're going to test is null. And to go deeper, null means nothing. That nothing means your interest.
Sir, Rajkumar sir. Rajkumar sir. Sir, what happened?
அடுத்த ஜெனரேஷன் கொஞ்சம்
Rajkumar sir.
எல்லாரும் இன்ஜினியர்ஸும் ஆயிட்டாங்க.
Rajkumar.
அக்கா பசங்க எல்லாரும் டாக்டர் का பையன் மட்டும்தான் பையனும் டாக்டர் பொண்ணு. அது இப்போ என்னோட பிரதர்ல அப்படி அழகாக மெடிசன் படிக்க வச்சு கொரோனாக்காக பிள்ளைங்கெல்லாம் போயிட்டு ஹாஸ்பிட்டல் என்னோட இல்ல இருந்தா
Dear participant, please stay on the line. There is some technical issue. Please stay on the line. Thank you.
Join பண்ண சொல்லுங்க சார். ராஜ்குமார் சார்.
வருதா வாய்ஸ் வருதா? Okay.
Yes sir, audible.
Oh, fine. I'll proceed. As I said, the softwares are available. You can simply feed the data, but no software can interpret the data. There may be some manual. It is only the human intellect that can interpret. You can feed the data, software can help you to get your regression and all results it can get you, but only the human intellect will have to be engaged to interpret the data by using the manual, but only the human intellect can interpret the data. Be sure about it. Be sure about it. Okay. And another point is, now that interpretation, statistical results in some of the competitive examinations, they give you only they give you only the results, and then they ask you to interpret. For example, R square. They don't give you the regression equation, nothing of that sort. They give you regression equation R square 0.9 interpret. They also prescribe a number of words, say 50 words. When R square is 0.9, what does it mean? You have to interpret. So software cannot give you the interpretation. You have to do it. When R square is in regression, R square is 0.9, which means 90% of the variation in different variable are being explained by the variation in independent variables. And 90% of the variation in different variables are associated with the variation in different variable. So all these you will know only when you learn to interpret the data. Now software is very handy, will help you to do any sophisticated analysis, but again only the human intellect will come to your rescue in terms of will have to be engaged in interpreting the data. And no software can interpret the data, but it can only give you some guidelines, some manuals, some guidelines were given, but human intellect will have to be used. Okay. And the next point is objectivity. When you talk about quality research, this is what I've been trying to explain. Objectivity in social science is very, very, very important as far as quality research is concerned. Objectivity means avoiding all biasness, all prejudices. When you have a problem in hand, you have lot of beliefs, lot of your own conception, misconception, your own passion, your own liking, disliking. You have so many things in your mind about your own research problem. Do away with all that, avoiding all biasness, all prejudices, all beliefs, all compassions, all passions about your own. You have to approach it objectively. Only then you will be able to do justice to the research problem. There is one economist, of course, he is a wonderful economist. I mean, he is a Nobel laureate, Gunnar Myrdal. He wrote a book called Objectivity in Social Science Research. It is about 110 pages. This is the book which I liked most in my life. Objectivity, you can note down. Objectivity in Social Science Research. It is written by Gunnar Myrdal. He says, unless, because we are all human beings. We are after all human beings. We tend to be biased. We tend to have some likings, some dislikings, some passion, some fear, some belief about the problem. You have to avoid all that. You have to do away with all that biasness, and then you do with your research work. Only then your work will be really, as I said, devoid of beliefs, hopes, fears, prejudices. Only when you avoid all this, your work will be of useful to the society. So objectivity is important. Next one is, if you look at the stages, you have title, introduction, review of literature, methodology, analysis, discussion, policy implication, conclusion. In any of these, in particular in social science, just like giving importance to theory, you must give importance to policy implications also. Because after all, as I said, gone are those days. Now many of the policies are trying to draw some input from the existing research work. They will not tell you, but when you publish it in the form of an article or a book or a manuscript, definitely policymakers, if your work is really of some quality, they will definitely make use of your work in formulating policies. Policies for whom? Policies for the well-being of people. People means you and me. Policies are for improving our welfare, improving the livelihood of people, improving the happiness of people, isn't it? So that should be the goal. That should be the goal. Therefore, in your own study, spare some pages, and you must also get to know what policy is related to your research work. whether it is agriculture or industry or service sector. Behind everything, there is a policy which is regulating. Already, policy is in place. So, to formulate, to modify the policy, to make the policy more effective. Whether the policy makers, whether they bother to take your inputs, doesn't matter. It is our duty to send some inputs for the policy making. So spare at least some page, some 10 pages in your thesis for policy implication. That is important. So in the modern day, many of the decisions made on are being made based on the research output. And the social science students, researchers must give some priority explicitly. Some people they do it, some they also have it explicitly. But my only plea request is make it explicit in your thesis, saying that this is the policy implication. Even if it is for 5 pages, 10 pages, no harm. But make it pakka in your thesis. And then conclusion, even in findings and conclusion, I see one particular strange thing in the thesis. Many of the observations they claim that they are findings. Supposing a candidate has chosen 500 samples, or 200 samples, 300 samples. And in the findings, they say the first finding is this study has taken 300 samples for our study. That is not a finding. That is your observation. Of the 300, if you are able to relate that with your objective, okay, of the 300, so 20% is living below poverty line. It becomes a finding. But not mere sample size is becoming your finding. No, absolutely not. I see this point because we write some 20 pages as findings. Whichever one you are able to relate that with your objective, whichever one which you are able to say something with your own data, you are able to substantiate, it becomes a finding. Otherwise, they are observations. You have collected the observation. How you have related that observation with your own objective and inferred your connected with your the one which you have inferred. Inference are more of findings, not your mere observations. Please be clear about it. Similarly, conclusion, again, same words they use to conclude. Conclusion is you conclude, having taken up the problem, this is what is being done, and we conclude. The study concludes within the given time, given resources, the problem, literature, data, analysis, you are able to, that is not the end of it. That is not the end of it. You are able to conclude. So those things also one has to be very careful. And I will take another 5-10 minutes. Plagiarism. If on the topic of quality research, I am saying because plagiarism is the AIDS among students. They simply copy. In those days, we used to copy from the books and then you prepare assignments. Now cut and paste. Plagiarism is an academic disease. You don't learn anything. You must learn to write. You must learn to construct sentences. You have to try yourself. Don't worry, even if it is horrible, but you try yourself. At the most, you can make some grammatical mistakes. You try to see when you read an article for 5 pages, 10 pages, you read once or twice, you pause it, and then you start writing. What is that you have understood in your own language? Every individual has got a fine style of writing that you must attempt. You must try. You must try to formulate sentences. Write a paragraph. Write one sentence. In 1 month, you'll be able to write one paragraph. I am 62 years old now. I am not able to write 2 pages a day. So I'm not saying it is difficult, but you have to try yourself. And every individual has got fine style of writing. But if you copy, you are doomed. You don't learn anything. And copying in the sense, supposing you are quoting something in your literature within quotes, you give the reference, that is not plagiarism. But simply copying from some other work and producing it as if it is your own work is plagiarism. It is an academic AIDS, academic disease which students are suffering. I am not trying to blame. Who is responsible? Teachers are responsible. You give them assignment, they'll write for 10 pages, simply cut and paste from some textbook. Now it is there available in computer. Cut and paste and they submit the assignment. You give 11 marks. Total marks say 10 da. Without correcting, you give 11 marks. So students, they learn only just copying. Make them write. Let them commit mistakes. You do the correction in the classroom. At the most, they can put is as was as where. They can do mistakes only in verbs, without which they cannot commit any mistake. But they should try. They should try constructing sentences. And that is what is going to fetch them job. When you go out, whether you work in a college or university or in some company or in some corporate sector, wherever, you are expected to write something. You are expected to prepare a report. It may be for 5 pages, 10 pages, 20 pages, we don't know. But if you don't know how to draft it, how will you survive? The company will throw you into the dustbin. You cannot survive in a college, you cannot survive in a university. இது வந்து நான் சொல்றேன் அப்படின்னா நீங்க எல்லாம் காப்பி அடிக்கிறீங்க நான் அப்படி சொல்ல வரல. My dear friends, students must determine. ஏன்னா once you learn to write, you will feel totally confident. You will love yourself. You write one page and read it yourself. You will enjoy. You will know the potential in you. There will be some mistakes. We are after all human beings. Is a vasa pota enna the fan thalamela undruma vasa vera pota enna, nothing will happen. Even if you commit some dirty mistakes, nothing will happen. Nobody is going to bother. Those mistakes can be corrected. But if you do this plagiarism, your entire career is doomed. No company will prefer you. Nowhere you will get a job. I am not trying to be pessimistic. I am only signaling. I am only trying to. You are all like my children. I am advising you. But you must learn. When you want to ride a cycle or a car, you want to drive a car. Simply watching someone driving car for 2 months, 3 months. You cannot drive. You can get into a car, put the key, start it. You try yourself. Vehicle will move this way, that way. You must learn to adjust it, change the gear. Only when you try yourself. Same way, simply by reading literature, you will not. You must try. Take a white paper and start trying. Write 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 1 paragraph. No matter how ugly it is, no matter how many mistakes it carries, don't worry about it. You try. Human brain is so powerful, my dear friends. The mistakes on the aduva, of course, somebody else will correct. Neengla correct panninga because you have been reading. But and the attempt pandlena, one day you will some angel will come and do that. Nothing will come in a dream. You have to do it. You try yourself. You will succeed. You will succeed within 1 week. You try from today onwards, this afternoon onwards. You read an article for 5 pages, 10 pages, close it. If you are not confident, read it twice, thrice, 4 times, close it, and then you write, this paper is related to income and expenditure in RELO. These are the variables undertaken for this study. This study has used this particular technique. This study has found this. You can write. You can write, provided you attempt. Then you will develop your own style. And now, Solra, my dear friends, every individual has got a fine style. It is hiding in you. Everyone has got an excellent style of writing. Everyone has got a style of speaking. Everyone has got a style of writing. That is going to fetch you a job. You go and be appointed in a place. If you are not able to draft something, first of all, they'll think very little of you. They'll throw you out. I am not pessimistic, but I am only making a request. I am making a plea to all the students to learn to write. அப்பதான் அந்த plagiarism இப்போ இந்த COVID-19 we are trying to fight. அதே மாதிரி COVID-19 is a pandemic. It's a global issue. அதே மாதிரி plagiarism is an issue for the students, for the research scholars. Don't do that. அதே மாதிரி ராஜ்குமார், நான் சொல்றேன் அப்படின்னா, it's not that others are doing plagiarism, I am not. அப்படி இல்லை. These are certain things which we are knowingly or unknowingly doing it, but
Participants, please stay on the line. There is some technical issue. Please stay on the line. Thanking you.
Rashmar, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You will be
Okay. So of course, I have almost completed. Just one or two. As I said, writing is a pleasure. Writing is a pleasure. And students should also learn to publish in peer-reviewed journals, and you have impact factor, all that. You ask Naveen, he'll be able to tell you impact factor through our Didir. You will come and say, sir, we have published in a journal where the impact factor is 2, 3, Almarla Solvar. You find out, but see that don't publish in paid journals. There are some journals who say you pay 2,000, 3,000 rupees, you'll publish. Don't do that. You try to publish in peer-reviewed good journals. Now that they say UGC has come out of the list, UGC approved journals, those are required. Those are required. And the last point. For research, my dear young friends, two things are required. Number one, attitude. Number two, aptitude. Two things are required. Attitude means regularly doing reading. A researcher should read at least 100 pages a day. Regularly reading, meeting the supervisor, discussing, sit in front of computer, try to learn. Continuously you do it. That is attitude. Okay. Another one is called aptitude. Some students, they have the aptitude of writing very well, and they have the aptitude to speak very well, whatever, either in English or in Tamil, any language, to express their ideas well in their own language. That is aptitude. For research, both are required. But my only point is, at least one thing is required, either aptitude or attitude. I would say attitude is important. See, Dr. Bhupati, of course, he is now professor there in Bharat University. When he joined under me, he used to sit in, that was the first time we bought computer in our department. That was in 1990, I don't know, early 1990s, so many years back. He used to sit in front of computer for days. I don't know when he is leaving for lunch, for urinals, I don't know. He'll be in front of computer. He will not go away. Evening 5:30, I'll go back home, but he'll be there with the computer. Now, that is called attitude. Of course, he has good aptitude also. He is a person who can speak well, and he is a person who has gained mastery in SQL. I'm giving this example because that attitude, just of course, and he will come to my room and say, he will find out my mood. And then, sir, shall we discuss today? And you will find out if I'm in good mood, then he will start discussing. Otherwise, if he finds that I'm not in good mood, he will go away. Sir, I'll come on some other. Come, Bhupati. No, sir, I'll come on some other. So that kind of attitude is also required. Sometimes everybody is human being. If the supervisor's mood is not good, don't go to his room or her room. They will only shout at you. So aptitude and attitude both are required. If you have both, you will become a Nobel Prize winner. But you must have either aptitude or attitude. If you don't have both, God can only help. God can only help. With this, I thank all of you for having listened to my lecture. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity given by Dr. Rajkumar. He is another Bhupati, Kuti Bhupati, emerging. And I'm happy that he told all my students are doing well beyond whatever that I've earned in the last so many years, my own bank balance and my own property. But I'm happy that my scholars are doing well. That happiness cannot be equated with any of my bank balance or whatever. So indeed, my heart is full, and I'm indeed very, very thankful to Dr. Rajkumar, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Is there time left, Rajkumar?
Sir, thank you so much, sir. I'm really like the word plagiarism is the academic disease. I'm really interested.
Yeah. Question, please.
Yes, sir. Actually, we have received 2 questions from chat box, sir.
Okay.
First one is Kritika asked the question, sir. Primary data or secondary data, which one is best in research? This is first question, sir.
Let me answer one by one.
Yes, we have only 2 questions.
No, wait. Rajkumar, I will answer the first question and then you go to the next question.
Okay, sure, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Kirtika, for research, both primary and secondary both are required. Strictly speaking, first step is to lay your hands on secondary data. Okay, it may be for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, depending upon your research problem. And having collected the secondary data, you try to find out there is some gap. Certain things cannot be collected by secondary data. So you find out some missing link that you can do it in your primary data. That is the strict form of collecting data. Find out second data, what is missing in the secondary information, you go for your primary. Okay, so the answer to your question is both primary and second data are important. Another answer is some of the candidates will be very, very sound in mathematics. They'll be very good in using some mathematical models. Okay, for them, they need not go in for collecting primary data. What they can do is they can lay their hands on secondary data, which is available already for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Collect the data and use your model. Okay, and then come out your inferences with your findings and all that. But depending entirely on secondary data, mostly students in foreign countries is what, because secondary data is more dependable there. I'm not saying that secondary published data is unreliable, but if you are competent of using some model which warrants data for 50 years, 100 years, please stick to only secondary data. Otherwise, combine both primary and secondary, because only when you go to the field, you are able to witness your own research problem. You get lot of insights. You get lot of quality inputs from your primary data collection. Only when you go to the field, you will know how the problem exists in real world. If you depend only on secondary published data, this coughing is not corona coughing, ordinary coughing only. If you depend only on secondary data, you will not know, you will not have the time to enjoy your primary field insights. So I would say try to balance between these two. You try to synchronize between both secondary and primary data. Okay? Have I answered your question? Kirtika. Yeah. Rajkumar, next question.
Sir, the second question is regarding plagiarism, sir.
It's called plagiarism.
Plagiarism.
Okay.
Plagiarism.
Ah.
If it is an bibliography in review of literature, is there any issue with plagiarism?
No.
This is the second question.
Because it happens. I know. Now that software they have improved, that if it is there in the bibliography, in the references, it used to avoid all that. But plagiarism, primarily, I am only trying to address that's simply copying from some reports and projecting it as if your own sentences. Even in your text also, now that it is allowed up to 20%. But plagiarism, what I really mean is simply copying others' work. Just put it in your own work as if you have written it. That is, I am objecting only to that kind of plagiarism.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a question. Sir.
Yeah, tell me. I'm listening.
Yeah, my name is Ramya. I have asked this question. Actually, my bibliography, my review of literature is in annotated bibliography. So,
Okay.
is there any issue in plagiarism? That is what I meant to ask you, sir.
No.
No issues. If you are putting the bibliography part correctly, no issues at all, right,
No
sir?
issues at all. Now, the software which checks this plagiarism, they avoid this. They say this part of references, bibliography, they avoid it, and then they give your actual writings.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. Any other question? Similarly, as I said, research scholars should learn to ask questions. Yeah.
Hello, sir. I am Soumya Mary Matthews from Bardiyar University, sir.
Very good.
What are the things affect the plagiarism, sir?
What are the
things affect the plagiarism, sir?
Okay. See, as I said, primarily, somebody has done some work in say in Madhya Pradesh. Okay. They simply copy the work, only change the title. Instead of Madhya Pradesh, they put Tamil Nadu, and wherever Madhya Pradesh is there, you just change only Madhya Pradesh, put Tamil Nadu. Means it is the work done by somebody else. Okay. And you projecting it that it is being done in Tamil Nadu. You have not done the work. You have done the work of simply copying it from the work of Madhya Pradesh. It is called 100% plagiarism, which you are not supposed to do. Fine. That is number one. Number two, supposing you read a book or journal, articles or some manuscript. Okay, you pick up some sentences. And if the sentences are just exactly the same, verbatim, you give within quotes, give the reference. Okay, it will not become a plagiarism. On the other hand, you give some definition without giving any reference or note, it will turn out to be a plagiarism, that it has been picked up from some book for which you have not given the reference. So you try to avoid these two. Okay, that will do to avoid the plagiarism.
Hello.
Yeah.
So I have a question. That you said that making hypothesis is not necessary with every topic.
Come again. Data.
As you said earlier, that formulating hypothesis is not necessary with every topic. Then how can we justify this, that with a particular topic not making hypothesis is good or not? How can we justify this?
Yeah, have you finished the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, you go back, if it is recorded, go back to my record, and I am only saying it is not mandatory. It is not formulating hypothesis is not compulsory at all. if it is warranted. See, hypothesis is an assumption, okay? Where you feel some gray area, something which is uncertain, you want to test it explicitly, making an formulating hypothesis. And if it is warranted, you do it. I am saying this because in some of the cases where formulating hypothesis is totally not relevant, what they do is they feel that it is ritual, it is compulsory. Therefore, they bring it in the form of a hypothesis and make it, it becomes laughable stuff. It depends on the situation. If it is warranted, you formulate it. If it is not warranted, it is not compulsory at all. At all.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Rajkumar? Why only girls are asking? What about boys? Boys they are meddling with the mobile? Come on, friends.
Sir, one of the questions placed in chat box, sir. The question is, if we take someone questionnaire and use on our own thesis, is it plagiarism? How do we avoid it?
Questionnaire, of course, it is strictly speaking, it is plagiarism, because once you take somebody else's questionnaire, that means the pattern, isn't it? You follow the pattern, but don't use the exact same words. You try to change the words depending upon your problem. If you are just taking it verbatim, same form, same format, it is plagiarism at all. And some students, they don't even mention that it is somebody else's questionnaire. Okay. Examiner, supposing a person who is well versed with that field may find that it is not his questionnaire or her questionnaire. It is being, why should you do it? You prepare your own question. You can take some help, some tips from the format. But depending upon your problem, depending upon your objective, you formulate it. You learn to formulate some questionnaire. You take it as a guideline, but don't simply put it in verbatim. I will not advise. It is plagiarism.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. On the behalf of our college principal, sir, I would like to invite Monojodi sir to deliver the vote of thanks for the session.
One second, last word.
Okay,
my dear participants, I will send my PowerPoint to Dr. Rajkumar, and Dr. Rajkumar will circulate it to all the participants. Okay? Fine? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, now I invite Monojodi sir to deliver the vote of thanks for this wonderful lecture.
அனைவருக்கும் என் இனிய தமிழ் வணக்கம். Good afternoon to everyone. I am happy. It's my pleasure to thank our most respected resource person, Professor Dr. M. Ravichandran sir, for enlightening us with their knowledge. Today's lecture was full of knowledge, informative and interesting things. I hope it gave deep insights into the topic and also revealed some interesting facts. I am pretty sure that precious knowledge that Professor Dr. M. Ravichandran sir gave us will definitely help to research scholars as well as society. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Dr. M. Ravichandran sir for taking out time from their busy schedule and enlightening us their knowledge. Thank you so much, sir. And also thank our respected principal sir and organizers of this program who made this session successfully. Last but not least, I also thank all the participants for paying your attention and learning. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sir, thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Dear participants, the next session will start at exactly 2 o'clock. So be ready 1:45. Thank you.
Sir, in the same link. Hello.
கொடுத்து வந்துடுறேன்.
Super.